Being the first awakened in your family can feel like a blessing and a burden. But I want to be clear, it's not always meant to feel like a burden, and why it is so important to answer the calling, do the inner work, and then embody your power and your enlightenment so that that feeling of it being a burden gets released. So if you feel alone, if you feel misunderstood, if you feel like the black sheep, or what I have redefined it as the rainbow goat, then this message is for you. So I hope that y'all are all doing so amazing today. If you are new to my channel, my name is Lindsay, or should I say Minnie Mouse is making a cameo and will be delivering your messages today. Then you are welcome here. I'm so glad you're here. This channel is all about self and spiritual development, being the best version of you that you can possibly be, and manifestation. And if you are interested in the financial resources that helped me turn my life around in that way, then you'll find those resources linked in the description box below. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into this video. So I want to start by saying that you are not broken. What you are doing is breaking cycles. And make no mistake, it absolutely is a calling. It can just look like and feel like, more importantly, dysfunction and chaos and all of that. But there really is a deeper spiritual meaning going on, which is that you do have a calling over your life. And some of us answer this calling and some of us don't. And for those that don't, it's really because, your human mind will trick you into feeling like it's too hard to do what is required in order for you to receive the changes that is actually what your heart desires. And for those that do answer the calling, it's because on some level we know that by doing the work, answering the calling, that on the other end of all that is so hard, and of course it absolutely is. I never want to lie about that. It was extremely hard for me and took a lot of work. But what's on the other end of all of that hard stuff and that inner work and that healing is freedom. And the thing is that's what we really want, even when it comes to things like wanting money, right? We think we want money, but actually really what we want is to be financially free. It all kind of comes back to freedom being what we really want. And that's what I find that you get, and that freedom in your truth, that freedom where you're not triggered by your environment and your family and all of those things that are not meant to control you the rest of your life, right? And definitely not what's meant to be passed down to future generations either, and what you are doing there in your family now. So one of the signs is a big one, and one that I find all cycle breakers tend to resonate with, which is that you feel emotionally distant or even spiritually misaligned with your family. So those were both big ones for me. I grew up in a home where there were two opposing and completely different belief systems going on, and they were both extreme. And while I participated and played the part right, I never really had a real personal relationship with God. And now that, I'm past the point of answering the calling and or callings and the dark nights of the soul and awakenings, and then really embodying my enlightenment, now that's my whole life. I talk to God and listen all day, every day. You know, it's where I source my energy, my love, and the key word being source, right? And so it all comes from within. It all comes from my connection to source now. And so that's a big one. And another one is that you probably were very sensitive, are still very sensitive. The sensitivity is a big one. And this can really span across several different things. You know, I'm sure, of course, emotionally is an obvious one. And you were probably really sensitive to energy and even being heard and seen. And you could have even experienced a lot of sensitivity physically. You know, you might have been the one in your family that was really sensitive to sound, for instance, or being in crowds, or even being called too sensitive or even too deep, right? Like you felt like you came with a warning label or something, like, look out for that one, they'll take you deep, as if there's something wrong with that, right? And another one is that you probably always had a desire for healing because, again, you always knew, consciously or not, on some level, that it's what makes you feel better and why it's worth it. And even if your family members had ever participated in any kind of healing, you know, going to therapy or anything like that, you might have felt like for them it was more of a have to, like a chore, right? But there's a big difference between that and having a real desire for healing, right? And so you probably felt and experienced that difference. And another one, and this kind of plays into the same thing, is that you've probably just always had a deep inner knowing. Again, consciously or not, it was that connection to source. It was that particular calling, and it probably showed itself in many different ways. I'm sure that, you know, you were the family member that gave really, really good, strong advice, and probably from a very young age, that maybe left other family members wondering where the heck that came from, right? And you probably also were just always able to, and from a young age as well, able to see right through people. And not only family members, which is tricky because often it's the people closest to us that we have the most trouble really seeing, but you were probably able to do that along with new people entering your family, either, you know, by marriage or, you know, boyfriends or girlfriends. You know, you probably could pick up on who someone was and their intentions almost immediately. And the last sign that I want to mention is that you also have this desire to normalize the experience and your very truth that every lineage has a first light, and that's you. All right, so let's talk about the weight of awakening, because again, going back to that burden part of it, it is a very real experience for cycle breakers and people who were chosen for that particular calling in their family. But what I want you to understand is that you weren't meant to and are not meant to carry it all, but you were chosen to shift it. And I really hope that you hear me when I say that and that it sticks, because the stories that we tell ourselves are everything. They are constantly shaping our belief systems about ourselves, within ourselves, and that's what shapes our reality. And that's why the more conscious that you can become, the better, you know, because then you become hyper aware of the stories that you're telling yourselves, the narratives, the words that you're using, the conversations that you are having with yourself. And I find that the moment you really start believing that you were chosen to shift it but not carry it all, is really the moments when you start to believe in the very real potential of that burden being released. And then that potential leads to the actual release, and that you don't experience that burden, that suffering anymore, because it's not meant to be something that you just suffer with, right? And it makes sense if you really think about it. We know that there is no joy without suffering. And so even if you have to intellectualize it, you know that it doesn't even make sense that you would only experience the burden and the suffering part of it. It actually makes more sense that doing the inner work is going to lead to a release and a shift in it, and then embodying this beautiful truth, which is that you are the universe experiencing a human being rather than a human being experiencing your environment. And believe me, I get it. The emotional toll is so real. The guilt, the isolation, the inner conflict that it all comes with. But again, this is one of those things where the only way out is through. And there were plenty of times in my life where I really tried to force this process. And I think why it's important to talk about as well, because I'm hoping that it won't cause the same stagnation or delays for you, or what you might perceive to be delays or stagnated energy. But I was so desperate to feel better and not be so burdened by this calling, being who I was in my family, that it really kept me from feeling what I needed to feel and go through in order for it to be released, right? And so, things like crying for my inner child, or even my adult self, and for all of that time that I had felt so unseen and unheard and just hurt, and like I was in a corner all by myself and didn't have anyone, and that it was such a scary, unsafe feeling for my whole life, and so I really had to go through that healing, and that mourning, and even mourning the relationships that I knew would never come back together, even if it was for the absolute best of my heart and the rest of my life and my greatest and highest good, and in an effort to go in the direction of only people, places, and things that served me, right? And so that's why I say the only way out is through. It's not something that you can force, but allowing that, again, means there is freedom on the other end of it, and you don't have to fight it. In fact, the more you allow that flow, the better off you are going to be. And if you are still in a place where you haven't quite reached the point of being able to validate yourself, please let me be that for you right now and tell you that they may never understand, but you don't need their permission to evolve. And also discovering that inner peace within yourself that comes with being completely and totally okay and even whole when you are misunderstood is one of the most powerful things you could ever do and be for yourself. And I think it's important also to remember that not every situation is like mine, where relationships just end for good. You know, if that is a fear of yours, it's important to work on that. And of course, any clinginess to that outcome, being attached to that outcome, is really not helpful for this process. But I do want you to know that I have come across plenty of beautiful souls in the YouTube community who have shared their experiences like this, who have mentioned that after stepping away to do what they needed to do for themselves and evolve and embody their truth, that there were plenty of times that family members, after seeing how well they were doing, came back into the picture, and those relationships did come back together, and that even the enlightened one was able to inspire change and evolution in another. And so while it's important not to be attached to that outcome, that possibility is very real and may help any anxiety or fears about letting people go that you may be struggling with. Let's move on to protecting your peace and honoring your truth in some ways that you can do this. And it takes practice, but again, that practice leads to the freedom that you want and that you so rightfully deserve. And also, that practice leads to more of the blessing and less of the burden. And eventually, if you keep at it and keep oversaturating your belief system and honoring your truth and protecting your peace, it sticks and you won't have to try so hard anymore. And so one of the ways that you do this is through grounding. And so breathing is really important. I know that it sounds simple, but our nervous systems are so messed up because we really don't live in a world that nurtures your parasympathetic nervous system and gets you out of fight or flight, right? And so if you can even take 5 minutes 3 times a day simply to focus on your breathing, this is very powerful and very healing for your nervous system. And again, the more healed our nervous system is, the more abundance that we can hold as well. And so another one is going out in nature. I talk about this all the time, but nature holds healing codes, and all you got to do is just be out there, reduce screen time and just be still and silent in nature and just receive and let it do its thing. And again, protect your peace, especially when it's hard. It is going to be hard if it's not something that you're used to. But again, when you keep practicing and keep doing it, even when it's hard, eventually it sticks and it's not so difficult anymore. It just becomes kind of who you are. You just become the peace and embody that. And it's not something that just needs to be so worked on and so focused all the time. It's just the new you. And so another thing that you really want to look out for is when you are dealing with your family members, you want to be really careful not to convince or over-explain yourself or react or anything like that, or even preach, right? Because the thing is that keeps you from remaining in your power, and it's all about complete and total ownership of your power. And I also want to be clear too that anyone who is devoted to disproving you is a complete and total waste of your beautiful energy. And the more that you embody the change and stop reacting, the better that you're going to feel. You'll feel that release more and more. You'll feel less of a need to defend yourself and convince and do all of that is unnecessary and just simply makes you step out of your power and give it away. And another thing that really, really helps, I find, is having a daily practice of some sort. So lighting a candle, taking a bath, working with the elements are great. I work with fire and water a lot, and so those really help with me. And also saying a daily affirmation. Again, if you're feeling overwhelmed or anything like that, just keep it simple and just pick one, and one that really resonates with making you feel safe, and if you need one, I mentioned this one a lot and it's just really been helpful for me. And the affirmation is, all is well, everything is working out for my highest good, and from this experience only good things will come, and I am safe. So that's a great one if you need one. And also, having some sort of visualization practice is great as well. You need to be sending out that Wi-Fi signal and projecting that out so that your reality can catch up every single day. And also, if you need a little bit of a boost, I would check out my subliminal, the one in particular titled "You're Not Broken, You Are Becoming." That one is great for being the chosen one in your family. And I really love to listen to subliminals while I'm sleeping and let my subconscious mind go to work. And so that's a great one if you need a little bit of a boost as well. So let's jump ahead. You have embodied the shift, and now you understand that you are a bridge between generations of silence and generations of healing. You are an example of peace. And most importantly, and probably my favorite thing that I could say in this whole video, is that now your peace is your protest and your healing is your rebellion. How cool is that? That is always going to stick with me, and I want to repeat it one more time. Your peace is your protest, and your healing is your rebellion. And if and when anyone should ever ask you, what are you protecting yourself from? And your response is this: it's not who I'm protecting myself from, it's who and what I am protecting myself for. Because the thing is, being a cycle breaker is bigger than just you. Not only are you doing this for yourself and did what those around you and those before you couldn't or wouldn't do, it's for future generations, whether that be your family and your future generations or future generations, period. And that's the kind of thing that changes the world. It all starts from within us. And cycle breakers are so important right now, which is why you're feeling it and why you came to this video and why it's resonating so much. So I am going to do a part 2 of this video. It's just going to be a little bit more of a vlog style and me sharing some of my personal experiences and just what inspired this video. I kind of wanted to do the conceptual stuff first in case you're not interested in the more personal examples, but for those that are, I want to share what inspired this video because I actually just did get back from visiting my grandma and seeing a little bit of family, and it was really amazing for me to actually experience how far I have come and how just completely naturally I was in complete ownership of my power. I didn't have to try. I really experienced the new me around family and just thought I would share some of my thoughts and experiences on that as well. So there'll be a part 2, and I just want you to know that if this touched your soul, that you are not alone, and comment cycle breaker for me in the comments if you feel so inclined, and maybe even share this with someone who needs to know that they're not crazy, they're chosen, and just know that you are the first light, that you are so important, and that light echoes through generations. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and just know I love you so much. I am so proud of you no matter what. I'm rooting for you, pulling for you always, and I can't wait to see what you do.